Buck and Barbara Beatlesby loved three things: their town, their dogs, and each other. In that order. Buck's granddaddy had bought up most of their small Midwest town in the wake of the Great Depression, and he had held on to the land by being a shrewd businessman. He had diversified and created industry everywhere he went. He started with a small general store that branched into a post office. He founded the local school, auto repair shop, and diner. He put in the first gas station in the whole county, right there on the main highway through the town. It wasn't long before he established a laundromat, a hardware and feed shop, a shoe store, and even a beauty parlor and funeral home. It wasn't a metropolis or very cosmopolitan, but this modest town had everything anyone needed for good old-fashioned, honest living. It was Buck's father who continued the legacy by opening a video shop, a small urgent care, and, the most lucrative of all the projects, a private jailhouse. Other than fortifying the local volunteer fire brigade and starting an intramural baseball team, Buck's contributions to the legacy were more focused on growing what was already there, as opposed to getting too ambitious and losing it all. While Buck managed the majority of the town, Barbara ran the general store. It was her homegrown veg that stocked the overflowing wicker baskets, her jams and preserves that neatly lined the oak shelves. Her crafts and candles were artfully displayed in the front window. And it was she who baked all the cakes, cookies, pies, and tarts. She sold her chickens' eggs and homegrown flowers, and even honey from her lovingly cared-for bees. Bees, she called them. But her real passion was the butcher's block at the rear of the shop. A masterful butcher, Barbara sold hamburgers, steaks, sausages, and bacon, all sourced from their farm. She made creative pairings like lamb and pineapple fritters, mango and chorizo sausages, peanut and pickle burgers, and blackberry and liver pies. Fortunately, the locals were adventurous eaters, and Bee's Butchery became well known and beloved. In addition to the fresh meat, Buck and Barbara began to make jerky as a way to create protein-rich snacks for passerbys. And they were rewarded richly for their bold thinking. They could hardly keep stock in the shop, and even put up the prices twice to help reflect the demand. But soon their sleepy little town wouldn't be so quiet. A notorious killer who had garnered the descriptive and unsavory moniker, the Silver Slayer, was moved into Buck and Barbara's jail. With him came the reporters, the journalists, the hordes of angry civilians hungry to see him fry. The Silver Slayer was originally known in the news as the Care Home Killer, after he slaughtered a slew of elderly folks in a nearby retirement home. But his next killings took place in private residences, so he was renamed the Silver Slayer, a murderous maniac that targeted the old and the vulnerable. Buck and Barbara did not want them at their facility. But it all came down to a contractual mandate that came from the state. If they wanted to keep their jail contract, they had to house the Silver Slayer. The Slayer himself wasn't so much of the issue. It was all of the press and the attention that he brought with him. As more officials came to town, it was other Beatlesby industries that came under scrutiny. For example, the local donut shop picked up a fine for having a curb that was too high. The laundromat was cited for not having enough fire extinguishers readily available. And one YouTuber made a scathing expose of the diner after he found a bug in his barbecue sauce. A video went viral with the damning caption, "Beatlesby barbecue, a bug in every bite." That brought in the regulators. The diner was inspected, the urgent care was scrutinized and surveyed, and the school was audited from the playground to the pre-algebra curriculum. Everything was in order. Everything was top-notch. And after a few weeks of regulators turning the town upside down, an eventual calm came over Buck and Barbara. That is, until one afternoon, when the couple were busy in the general store. Buck was dehydrating skinny strips of meat, seasoned liberally in his secret spice mix. Barbara was laboring over a large steaming pot of steak and cherry cola stew, when the front door twinkled open. Making his way from the back and coming onto the main sales floor, Buck was greeted by two women in black tailored suits. They looked like twins, Buck thought to himself, carbon copies of one another. Both ladies were short, with fire-red bobs that framed thin, pale faces. Their clothes were sharp and neat, and they smelled expensive, like saffron and orris flower. They looked almost alien in the charming and rustic general store. Buck greeted them politely, but coolly asked them if he could help. They were obviously there for a reason. He knew regulators when he saw them. Equally professional and courteous, the women explained that they were from the Department of Health, and they needed to inspect the premises, including the kitchens, fridges, and freezers. Upon hearing the request, Barbara emerged from the kitchen, red-faced and frustrated. These damn regulators had torn up her town. They always came unannounced. They caused great disturbances to their life, their work, and their profits. Enough was enough. But the choice wasn't Buck's or Barbara's. They had to comply. And as if their bad luck wasn't enough, as they began to exchange heated words with the pair, the local sheriff came in for his daily pop and jerky fix. He refereed the two parties and explained to the Beetlebees that although he too had had enough of the city slicker out-of-towners, they did have a right to make sure the local enterprises were being compliant with the state and federal health and safety codes. Buck argued that they were being targeted, and Barbara accused the state of harassment. But the sheriff was clear. If the Beetlebees were not cooperative, they would be deemed recalcitrant and would be taken to their own jailhouse to sit and wait while the inspection took place. Either way, these ladies were going to take a good look around. Defeated and infuriated, Buck and Barbara allowed the two officials to slither around the shop, checking fire detectors and logging emergency signage. The sheriff, feeling rather sorry for the Beetlebees, sat with them and drank his Mountain Dew and snacked on his jerky as the hot water temps were checked and the surfaces were swabbed. The inspectors were thorough, and the sheriff couldn't help but be impressed by their officiousness. While one checked dates on Tupperware, the other headed over to the walk-in freezer. It was then that the sheriff and the Beetlebees heard a blood-curdling scream. The sheriff shot to his feet, but Buck merely hanged his head and sighed, while Barbara whimpered a muted cry. As the sheriff joined the inconsolable regulator, who was now sobbing uncontrollably into her colleague's arms, the sheriff was affronted by a ghastly sight. In the freezer, hanging from the ceiling, from sharp, shiny hooks, were rows and rows of half-butchered meat. But the carcasses weren't cows, sheep, and pigs, but rather men, sliced and diced into measurable proportions. In the corner of the freezer, folded neatly and piled high, were stacks of black plastic body bags. Body bags that had come straight from the jailhouse, directly to the Beetlesby funeral home. and then made their final stop at the general store. Now, I know this story is true because my brother's ex-girlfriend's aunt's lacrosse coach was once married to the sheriff, and he said that he would never forget the dense, chewy texture and sweet yet salty seasoning of Buck's jerky. This is it, my friends. The final episode of Season 6 of The West London Witch. But that doesn't mean that there is not plenty of storytelling occurring over the summer break. While the main show goes on a mini hiatus, the chills and thrills will be alive and well on our Patreon. I am delighted to announce the return of our annual summer reading program. And if reading isn't your thing, don't worry, because I do all the hard work for you. This summer, we will be reading the highly contentious and hotly debated In a Dark Place, the 1992 story of the Snedeker family, more commonly known as the Haunting in Connecticut case. All summer long, I will be reading the book to you, cover to cover, from right here in Cobweb Cottage, pausing along the way to explore the controversies, dig into the facts, and pick apart this truly divisive story. So grab a festive drink, light a candle, and join us on patreon.com. I cannot wait to spend the summer with you. Hello and welcome to the Season 6 finale of The West London Witch, a podcast where we share stories about those moments where we find ourselves very much not alone. As much as it saddens me to say goodbye to Season 6, I am delighted to gather once more for our annual meeting of the Midnight Society. If you're a 90s kid like me, you too may be nostalgic for the good old days of Are You Afraid of the Dark, Goosebumps, and So Weird. As much as these shows terrified me, nothing made me feel more alive than a scary story. I really credit these mini macabre stories for my love of ghost stories, urban legends, and terrifying tales. And now, as an adult, I look forward every year to our recreation of this iconic millennial moment. At the conclusion of every season of The West London Witch, we gather to share our own collection of urban legends and hometown horror stories, chilling tales to haunt you until the Season 7 premiere. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I'm Rebecca Strazina, and this is The West London Witch, Season 6 finale. I know it's true. A friend of a friend told me so. Part 6. Our first submission to the Midnight Society comes to us from the sun-soaked shores of Long Beach, California, and is told by haunted historian Amanda Ashley. This is the grisly and bizarre murder of Gladys Fair.
The Cooper Arms building in Long Beach, California, is a beautiful 12-story apartment tower built in 1923. It's known to be haunted, with people reporting hearing voices, mysterious footsteps, and feeling cold spots. But in August of 1935, it was also the site of a murder that shocked the city. Gladys Fair's body was found draped over the edge of her bathtub, as though it had been carelessly discarded. Investigators quickly determined that she had not died there. The murderer had dragged her body across a distance and attempted to wash the blood from her head. But something had interrupted the effort. Realizing that she was already dead, the killer had simply let her fall, leaving her hanging over the tub's edge. A single bullet was lodged in the back of Gladys's head. In the bathtub itself, police recovered a shell casing from a .32 caliber round. Authorities became convinced that whoever had moved the body must have possessed significant strength and was likely a man. Yet the usual explanation, robbery, just didn't fit, and the brutality of the act suggested something more personal. As the investigation deepened, attention turned to those closest to Gladys. Detectives hoped her sister, Florence Dowling, might hold the answers. Florence had recently visited Gladys, and that timing alone made her an important figure in the investigation. When questioned, Florence admitted that she and her sister had argued on the night of the murder. Still, she downplayed it, insisting it had not been serious. But another perspective soon emerged. Gladys's husband, who was living in San Francisco at the time, told police that his wife had been afraid of Florence. According to him, Florence frequently pressured Gladys for money. He also revealed a troubling detail. Florence owned a gun similar to the one used in the killing. The questioning of Florence stretched on for days. Then, in a startling turn, she told police that she might have committed the crime, but not in full control of herself. She claimed it could have happened under a malign hypnosis. Her statement only deepened the mystery. Doctors began evaluating her mental state. They testified that she suffered from severe delusions. She believed men were following her, entering her room uninvited and threatening her life. In their professional judgment, she was not mentally fit. At her hearing, Florence recounted the killing in chilling detail, but only as she perceived it. Her psychiatrist explained that she could not distinguish right from wrong and had blocked portions of the event from her memory entirely. Further medical examinations revealed that something physical as well as psychological was wrong. An X-ray of Florence's head showed a pituitary condition that was placing pressure on her brain. The physician believed this condition contributed significantly to her impaired reasoning and behavior. In the end, the court did not see a calculating killer, but a deeply unwell woman. The judge ordered Florence committed to a state hospital for the insane, closing the case not with resolution, but with the lingering unease about what had truly happened in the final moments of Gladys Fair's life.
Our next submission to the Midnight Society is shared by everyone's favorite uncle, my Uncle Richard. This is the terrifying tale of a savage creature that stalks the dark and misty moors of Devon, England.
Deep in the far reaches of the southwest of England, straddling the borders of the counties of North Devon and Somerset, lies Exmoor National Park, an area of some 270 square miles of open hilly moor that sweeps down to the dramatic seacoast of both counties. Exmoor is known for its myths, legends and folklore. But let's face it, so are all the moors in the southwest of England. After all, Exmoor is but a healthy stone's throw from where Sir Arthur Conan Doyle pitched his hero Sherlock Holmes against the Hound of the Baskervilles. And not forgetting the equally legendary Beast of Bodmin. And if that name sounds familiar, well, it should do. Our very own Good Witch enthralled us with an episode all about the gruesome and grisly history of the jail that sits on that very moor. But the birth of the legend of the Exmoor Beast is not rooted in the ancient past or filtered from generation to generation, gaining a fresh layer of myth and hearsay as it descends through the centuries. No. This legend is a mere 50 or so years old, but no less compelling because of that. In the early 1970s, stories started swirling around of a mysterious large black cat-like creature with a long black tail, similar to a puma or a leopard. For those of you not too familiar with British fauna, let me tell you, we have no big cats, no deadly poisonous snakes, and no killer spiders. In fact, the worst you might experience here is a seagull might swoop down and take your ice cream. These big cat sightings increased over the next decade and reached a peak in 1983. A farmer in the rural community of South Molton reported that over the previous 3 months, between 80 and 100 of his sheep had been killed. All of them had had their throats ripped out and their skin torn by claw marks. This was reported nationally and was taken so seriously that not once but twice the government deployed the Royal Marines, one of the most elite regiments in the British Army, to tackle and kill the beast. Despite being equipped with night vision goggles and sniper rifles, the Marines came back empty-handed. There is, however, whispers that at one point the Marines had tracked and cornered the beast to a derelict stone shed. They encircled the building, but when they went in to finish their grisly task, the building was empty. Since the 1980s, sightings of the Exmoor Beast have ebbed and flowed and are still being reported to this very day. The supposedly rational explanation is that in 1976 the Dangerous Wild Animals Act was introduced, which made it illegal to keep such animals without a license. And many owners simply released their pets into the wild. This, of course, holds some logic. However, an animal released in the 1970s would only have a life expectancy of some 15 to 20 years. So those sightings since the mid-1990s would be what? Offspring? There is, isn't there always, a more fantastic explanation that has its origins in the blurred lines that exist between historical fact and mythical tale. It is a narrative that unexpectedly starts in the rural uplands of Sri Lanka and ends in an historic house that clings to the sheer cliffs of the North Devon coast. So, dear listener, buckle up and join the ride. In 1830, the reclusive clergyman, the Reverend Walter S. Halliday, decided he was going to build his house on the only piece of flat ground on the towering cliffs between Porlock and Lynmouth. The house is of a type, part Gothic, part romantic, and would not look out of place in a Hammer horror movie from the 1950s. You get the idea. This, then, is Glenthorne. Now, bear with me as I introduce you to and give a little bit of needed background about the chronicler of the upcoming tale. Sir Christopher Ondaatje is an author, explorer, philanthropist and Olympian, to name but a few of his remarkable attributes. He grew up in Sri Lanka, then known as Ceylon, but was sent away to boarding school in Tiverton, Devon, at an early age. He would spend his school holidays with an eccentric uncle in Somerset, and it was during these visits that he first discovered and fell in love with the enchanting Glenthorne. Many years later, in 1984, Glenthorne was put up for sale, and by luck or happenstance, Christopher de Gier brought and lovingly restored the house to its former glory. But right from the outset, he knew that besides him and his wife, the property's inhabitants included the very real spirit of the good Reverend Halliday. Pictures that had been hung but didn't meet with the Reverend's approval would be hurled across the room. When a radio and tape player were installed in the library, the door to that room banged incessantly for 10 minutes or so, until the sound system was moved to a more discreet location. Noises would be heard throughout the house when both the corporal occupants were together in one room. Outside, too, in the grounds, Christopher observed weird markings and scratches at head height on a number of the trees. All this heard but not seen activity changed dramatically late one cold December night in 2004. Christopher had just returned from Sri Lanka, having been there to research an upcoming book. Sitting at his desk in the study, he suddenly became aware of another presence in the room and knew instinctively that the gentleman sitting perfectly at ease across the room from him was the ghost of the Reverend Walter S. Halliday. "Do you know you are not the first person from Ceylon to live in this house?" the Reverend asked. Christopher sat enthralled as Reverend Halliday took him on a journey of mythology and superstition. And it is this story that I now lay before you. A friend of the nephew of Reverend Halliday had gone out to Ceylon. We shall call it Ceylon, as that is what it was named at the time of this narrative, to work in the tea trade amongst the Sinhalese in the mountainous Kandy region of Ceylon. The Sinhalese people are thought to be the original people of the island, and legend has it they were the offspring of the union between a beautiful young girl and a lion. Inevitably, perhaps, the young man fell desperately in love with a truly radiant and high-born Sinhalese girl called Kumari. The two married and returned to England. Indeed, returned to Glenthorne. It soon, though, became evident to the Reverend that all was not right with their union. One night, the poor fellow confided in Reverend Halliday that their marriage had not been consummated due to the fears his young bride had that, according to Sinhalese legend, should they consummate the marriage, as she was a direct descendant of the union of a human and a lion, she could turn back into the form of a big cat. The Reverend did his best to allay his fears and said he should prevail upon Kumari that such stuff was nothing more than hackneyed myth. One night, however, the young man burst into Reverend Halliday's bedchamber screaming, "She's gone! She's gone!" It transpired that, despite Kumari's misgivings, youthful passion had got the better of them, and they had made love. Some hours later, the nephew's friend had woken from his sleep to find his bride no longer beside him. The following morning at daybreak, a search ensued with all those present at the grand house scouring every room and all the surrounding countryside. But Kumari was never found. All that was discovered that fateful day was a broken window in the front hall with scratch marks on the window frame and sill. Large, cat-like paw prints in the mud under the window, and territorial claw marks at a height of 6 feet or so from the ground on some of the trees that led away from Glenthal.
Our final submission this evening to the Midnight Society is a classic urban legend shared by one of my very best friends, my soul sister and fellow witchy woman, Monique Marie Gelino Schwannerman. Turn off your lights, friends, and step away from the mirror.
Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary. Oops. Hope you're not standing in front of a mirror. If you're a millennial and a 90s baby like I am, you probably heard about the lore and ritual of Bloody Mary. How you needed to go into the bathroom and turn off all the lights, like I did. Stand there in the dark, staring into the blank mirror with only a shadow of yourself, and maybe your cousins too, like I did. Chant Bloody Mary, if you dared, 3 times, like I did, and then see a figure emerge in the mirror that wasn't yours, like I did. Of course, we tried it first with a flashlight because none of our parents would spare us their lighter for 10 minutes to light a candle. Definitely too hazardous. But when that didn't work and the light reflecting from the flashlight to the mirror seemed to be too bright, my eldest cousin, who I looked up to and thought was the coolest person on earth, and still do, reached over and switched off all the lights completely. Then things got real. But let's take it back to the origin of the lore, which I had no idea about at the young age of about 8, with my bright blue sparkle art stuff nail polish and birthday cake flavored lip smacker lip gloss in hand, my most prized possession at the time. Seeing a woman with a bloodied face would have been horrific, but to be expected with a name like Bloody Mary. But I had no idea about the different versions of this lore, depicting Bloody Mary as scratching the summoner, pulling someone in through the mirror, revealing the future, or showing the face of a future spouse, or the face of someone destined to die. But where did this all come from? There's no one concrete answer, but it's speculated that Bloody Mary could have been about Mary I of England, who earned the nickname for persecuting Protestants, Elizabeth Bathory, a Hungarian countess who became one of the most infamous figures in European history, often called the Blood Countess, because legend claimed that she tortured many young women, murdered them, and bathed in their blood to preserve her youth. Or that it was about various local legends of murdered women, witches, or grieving mothers from their communities, which I find to be the most terrifying of them all. Now let's look at the science of it all, because I love believing in the supernatural. But what makes me believe in it even more is using every explanation to debunk what I've seen or felt, and then still not being able to explain what had happened. There's something called the Troxler effect. When you stare at a dimly lit face in a mirror for an extended period of time, your brain can distort the image. Combined with fear, darkness, and expectation, this can create a powerful feeling that something is appearing in the mirror. In addition, a lot more of what you see is constructed by your brain that most people don't realize. The optic nerve carries a very compressed stream of information, not a complete picture. There wasn't a confirmed percentage of how much your brain fills in the blanks on its own, but the percentages that are thrown around are pretty high, some even saying 80%. So if that's the case, how can we trust anything we see? Now, step back in time with me to my grandmother's peach wall-papered bathroom with pink shag rug, bath mats, and a matching toilet seat cover, of course, and a variety of animal-shaped soaps in a dish on the counter. I'm standing in a line with 3 of my other cousins, me being the youngest, and probably the one who took it the most serious. I grew up Catholic and believed in the afterlife and still do, and to me, this was the closest thing to using a Ouija board I'd ever experienced. After we recited Bloody Mary 3 times, nothing happened. Well, actually, I hadn't actually recited it 3 times. I chickened out before the first one and just mouthed it, maybe with one of my other cousins, but after being properly scolded by the other fearless 2, we decided to try again. This time adding an arbitrary turnaround each time after we said her name, which made being in that dark bathroom even more disorienting. Luckily, with the his and hers sink, we could comfortably stand side by side, but every time we would turn back around to the mirror, I was terrified of what I would see. But in the dark, it was barely anything. Until the 3rd time. We said, Bloody Mary, turned around, and for a moment, I saw a woman in a shroud of cloth, kind of like the images of the Virgin Mary that I'd seen before at school and at church. Feeling that this could not be good, I immediately bolted out of the dark bathroom and into the daylight of the hallway, through the living room, to where our parents merrily sat at the kitchen table, laughing and exchanging childhood stories, mainly about them getting into mischief and never getting away with it. I didn't dare tell them what we did because I didn't want it or her to follow me out there, to follow my family. Also, I did not want to get in trouble with my older cousin for being a snitch. And I knew that my Catholic mother would not have liked me mocking the spirits. I never did try the ritual again. I didn't dare. And I've never even said that name 3 times in a row until recording this for you today, which gave me a very uneasy feeling, so I hope it was worth it. When I returned home that summer from my grandmother's house, I attended a day camp before school started back up again. And the Bloody Mary ritual was, of course, something that everyone wanted to do every bathroom break. There were extremely high mirrors in this restroom, tilted downward looking at us, which seemed ominous in and of itself. And even after being triple dog dared to participate, I didn't. And of course it wouldn't have worked anyway, I exclaimed. It's broad daylight. And we very well couldn't cover the light streaming in through the side window panels. They were too high. I saw her, or something, in the dark already. I was prepared to potentially see something emerge in the mirror looking back at me in broad daylight. That I would not have been able to dispute. Such a silly ritual amongst silly young kids. Or was it? Did you ever try the Bloody Mary ritual in a dark bathroom? And were you ever terrified to see something emerge in the mirror that wasn't you? Like I did?
That concludes this evening's submissions to the Midnight Society and Season 6 of The West London Witch. What a joy and a privilege it has been to bring you these spooky stories for the past 6 years. I cannot thank all of you, our incredible listeners, enough for your continued love and support. To all of our storytellers, thank you from the bottom of my heart for entrusting me to share your experiences with the diligence and respect that they deserve. I feel so very honored to be able to feature your stories on our platform. To our fantastic Patreon community, your constant belief, investment, and enthusiasm for this show is a true light in my world, and I am so thankful for all of you. I cannot wait to spend the summer with you as we begin our 3rd annual summer reading program. And lastly, A colossal thank you to my very dear friend and our own resident sound magician, Danny. Working on this project with you for the past 6 years has been a real honor. I am so proud of our work, and I cannot believe we have completed 115 episodes. What a triumph. Thank you for your endless talent, advice, creativity, and pep talks. You truly bring the magic to this show, and I hope that we continue to work on it together forever and ever and ever. Although this is our final episode of Season 6, Season 7 will go live in a few short weeks. However, if you want to spend the summer with me here at Cobweb Cottage, please do come join us on Patreon. It is a really lovely and warm space full of like-minded people. And we'll be hanging out all summer, diving into the complex and controversial story of the haunting in Connecticut. Join us at patreon.com/The West London Witch. And until next season, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. Do you have a spooky story you'd like to share? I'd love to hear it. Drop me an email at thewestlondonwitch@gmail.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at The West London Witch. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And come and follow us for additional content on Instagram and Facebook. The West London Witch is created by me, Rebecca Strazina. Our sound designer and production magician is the incredible Danny Cross. Our theme music was bespokely written and performed by the wickedly talented Kyle Hall. Our cover art is the beautiful collaboration between Lizzie Wilson and Jake Bowser. Special thanks to Miss Sinead Bowers, our quality control and biggest cheerleader. And thank you to you, all of our listeners all over the world. These are your stories. Thank you for sharing them with us.